can't hear you. You hear me? Okay, I can't hear you on my end. Let's see. Okay, so I can't hear you on my end. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me speaking at all? You can? Okay. So I'm not hearing you on your end. I don't know if your microphone is picking up. Something.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you. There you go.
That's what. So was the mic. I had to hit the mic.
Loud and clear. Okay.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. Again, we're working out all of these bugs, ladies and gentlemen, and we will get it all together by the next time we add this broadcast. Marcel, welcome to Under the Influence. Thank you. And I also thank you for your technical help. Marcel is very good with technology, and he has helped us quite a bit with technology. And so we are here with him tonight, and we're going to talk about leadership. So, Marcel, thank you. So I know that you have quite a bit of experience in leadership, Marcel, and you have moved up the ranks. So tell us a little bit before I begin to start hitting you with these hard questions. Tell us a little bit about your role currently at Junior Achievement, and then tell us a little bit about the Copeland Watch Company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm currently a program coordinator at Junior Achievement, Southeast Michigan. And so my role is to coordinate programs. I work specifically with community-based organizations, and I do work with some schools as well. So my day kind of consists of educating our young students throughout Southeast Michigan and things concerning career readiness, workforce development, and entrepreneurship. And now we also do financial literacy. So coordinating those type of learning opportunities for young people is what I do on a day to day. Now, as far as the Copeland Watch Company, it's a watch company I founded a couple of years back. We do automatic and quartz watches, and then we'll be moving into mechanical watches. We are a micro brand, and so all that means is that we do small limited production runs at the time, and so it's very a niche market, but it's a huge market space, and so it's an industry that is $22 billion a year. And so we just hit that this year, $22 billion. That's a whole industry as a whole, which if it's pretty amazing. If you look at that's 2021, and that breaks the record that was previously set in 2014 of $20 billion for the industry. And so it's a huge industry. When people think about products, that they don't oftentimes think about your traditional automatic and quartz watches, but it's a huge industry that people spend a lot of money on.
Well, very good. Well, Marcel, as a watch collector, I am very happy that you've got that off the ground, and I look forward to purchasing a couple of your brands when they are available. And I encourage all of you who are watch collectors to look out for the Copeland brand. It's going to be very nice. So, Marcel, you are a millennial leader. And as you know, millennials get a lot of bad rap about their leadership. There are a lot of stereotypes out there regarding millennial leaders and the younger generation of people who are in leadership positions in various corporations and various positions. Tell me what your thoughts are about those stereotypes. Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? Do they need to be changed? How true are they? And we know that you are, based on what I know of you and what other people know of you, you're kind of an exception to the rule. So let's get you out of the equation. And let's talk about some of the other stereotypes exist. Tell me your thoughts about millennial leadership in corporate America right now.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about millennial leadership, the first thing that comes to mind is that, millennials are lazy, they're entitled, they're self-centered, and then they have no loyalty. And so, really, when you look at it, you have to kind of look at the generation of where we kind of came from and the experiences that we had, right? And so, we get a bad rap a lot that, we're just so into ourselves that we want everything now. But a lot of that comes from watching our parents and grandparents work for large corporations and then get booted out. Works for large corporations, get booted out. Maybe you get a gold watch. Maybe they'll buy out your pension or buy out your retirement, and then kick you to the side. And so a lot of millennials don't have that sort of loyalty in regards of, if you don't offer me the benefits that I want, I'm not going to wait until I'm 62, 63, 67 years old to decide I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going to take as much as I can now. And so they'll just go out there and leap forward towards opportunities. As far as being lazy, I don't think the millennials leaders are lazy. I think they just have a different approach. It's more of those, work smarter, not harder sort of things. Because we had technology available to us and we adopted it at a faster rate than our older workers, it caused kind of a clash. And so they call it reverse mentorship. And so you had millennials go into the office space and say, hey, we can do this a little bit better than you. But again, if you've been there for 20 years, you're like, you can't tell me nothing about my job. I know how to do this. And so millennials are like, okay, well, I can be on Twitter, I could be on Instagram while I'm doing my job. And to you, it looked like I'm just texting and knocking off, but I already did, what I'm supposed to do because I'm a little bit more productive. And so I think that's where it's a little bit jarring for people who's not used to dealing with millennials. It's like we have a kind of a different way of doing things. And so we're not going to put forth that hard of an effort because we know we can be a little bit more efficient in some spaces. So as far as being self-centered, there is some truth to that. Millennials are kind of catered to. Everything is about me. Everything's about now. Everything's about I and all manner of I-ness. And so you see these products that are marketed that, right here, right now, is all about you, ads or service right towards you. And so there is a little bit of that vainness to millennials. But by and large, those who are in leadership positions have kind of learned to balance that out.
So tell me about how do millennials feel about the older generations, like the boomers and the Gen X's? What's the prevailing attitude that millennials have toward those demographics, seeing that you have to work with them because boomers and Gen X's still make up a large part of the workforce, and I know that you work with many of them as well. So what is the prevailing attitude that millennials have about working with the older generations?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of it is that the older generation is non-progressive, that they're kind of like in the Stone Age. That's kind of how a lot of millennials think. They're willing to work with you, but there's this popular term that millennials use, or phrase, as I say, is, hand me the keys. That basically means is, I want to drive, I want to run a company now. Okay, you had your time. I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm getting at this point. You held on. I think I can do it now. Now, hand me the keys and drive. And if you don't, well, you can keep the keys, but I'm going to choose the vehicle I'm going to get in. So, I'm just going to just make my own way to getting to where I want to get to. But the overall prevailing thought is just that the older generation is out of touch with culture. It's out of touch with technology. It's out of touch with the way the world is going right now. And so we just kind of see a lot of people as just being unchanging. And so it's kind of like an uphill battle, of changing mindsets that's been established.
All right. So by and large, are the working relationships, are they harmonious? Is there friction? Is there tension? What do you find in your work with the older age groups? Do they respect you? Is there respect for one another? I mean, where are we with that?
No, in my experience, I've actually seen that it's pretty harmonious. Now, it requires some conversation at times. Like, why do you think the way that you think? And then how can we be more accommodating? Because sometimes you will find yourself in a meeting and find yourself on a project, and you're like, this thing just doesn't make any sense to me. And so, one long as conversation is open and honest, I think that it all works out. But by and large, everyone kind of just works together. And so people are just kind of open to different mindsets, different perspectives, maybe doing work or looking at culture a little bit differently, or even looking at processes a little bit differently. And so overall, it's been very harmonious.
Marcel, there is a big push right now regarding equality between men and women in a lot of areas. There are many movements that have taken place over the last few years that are pushing women to be more recognized, and especially in a leadership capacity. We have seen some names that have been coming up. Ketanji is now being considered as the first African American to be on the Supreme Court, female. We have other females that have been in positions of leadership and authority. Why do you think there's been such a push for that? And do you think that that's necessary, or are women overreacting to men in leadership positions?
No, you know what? Movements like Me Too in both of its phases, and other movements that are women-centered, women's rights centered, have shown us that there is a huge inequality between men and women, and that women have endured a whole lot of hardship in the workplace. And so the fact that we're even having this conversation shows that women have been kind of pushed to the back burner. I don't think they're overreacting. I think a lot of women still are kind of fighting and clawing to have their voices heard. Now, women, as far as being leaders, we know that there's still a huge gap between the genders when it comes to pay, compensation, benefits, especially in the corporate world. Things are getting better as these conversations are being had. But still, if you look statistically, they're still not on par in many industries with their male counterparts, and oftentimes doing either the same job or even a little bit more for that lower compensation. So I think that conversations needs to be furthered more so that they can come up and be in better positions of leadership.
How do you personally feel about women in leadership? You respect them? Do you think they do a good job? Do you think that like men, because there are some men who are in leadership positions that don't do a good job, that probably shouldn't be there. Do you think that there are women also in certain positions of authority that maybe can't do as well? I mean, what are your thoughts about women in leadership?
Well, I think in both genders, you have examples of people who didn't do the best job in leadership, but I think overall women are excellent leaders because they have the innate ability to take whatever it is that's given to them and make it better. They have the ability to see certain details that the male counterparts can't see. And also, they're very good at setting the tone for culture, especially in large organization structures where people can feel included. And that they also have the ability to nurture relationships so that they can go out and get funding that their male counterparts cannot get because they know how to speak to people and play to people's strength. And it even goes to organizational growth because they're not quick to fire you like a male counterpart will often do. They will kind of look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses, and say, you know what, I'm going to make a lateral move for you so that you can have this opportunity to grow as a leader. Not where you're at now, but we're going to carve out a path for you. And so a lot of times women in leadership come in and they expand the organizational role. Even if they're not the CEO or the vice president, you will oftentimes find a strong layer of leadership somewhere in the middle, and where in the HR office and legal department, where the organization is growing.
Okay, very good. Do you see any specific challenges that men and women in leadership have had? What specifically do you see as the biggest challenge to the equality of men and women in leadership?
Ego. I think the biggest challenge is ego, thinking that, one person is lesser, one gender is lesser. How dare, this woman make more than me? Or even it's sometimes in reverse, I got to show these men that, I can wear the pants too. And so I'm going to go to the extreme to almost emasculate the man and make sure that there's a strong core of female leadership. And so there's a lot of ego and play there that I think holds organizations back.
All right, good. Tell me somebody that you respect in leadership right now. There are a lot of individuals who are influencers, big time, right now. Tell me somebody that you would respect in leadership right now, and why do you respect that individual?
You know what? This is probably going to surprise a lot of people, but one person I really respect right now is AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez.
Mm-hmm.
I just really admire her story, her journey, and what she's doing right now. I mean, you couldn't write a better "quote unquote" Cinderella story. And just to see her stand up to the big boys, and it's just awe inspiring to me. So, don't always agree with the politics, but from a leadership position, just very inspiring to me.
Now, you mentioned something very interesting about her, that you admire the fact that she stands up to the big boys, which means that she obviously is not afraid, of controversy. She's not afraid of confronting individuals. And you and I both know, because of conversations that we've had in the past, that you can't be in any kind of leadership position and not be afraid to confront individuals. Why do you think that there are some leaders who are afraid to be confrontational?
You know what? I think when you have confrontation, you are oftentimes afraid of losing people. And so these leaders, they don't want to be confrontational because they think they might lose position. They wanted to play it safe. And so a lot of times you will see that. I've seen that happen in organizations where, something or a process wouldn't be going quite correctly. And instead of addressing it, they kind of just let it go on and persist because they didn't want to confront the person and be seen as, a bad boss or a bad leader. They want to be everyone's friend.
Is that possible? I mean, can you be a leader and want to be friends with everyone? I mean, are there individuals that, because of your leadership position, that you just can't be friends with, you can't be chummy with? I mean, how does that work? I mean, if you are a people person in the leadership position, how does that work, knowing that you can't be friends with everyone? How does that work?
Well, really, it's just trying your best to create the culture where everyone feels safe to share. But once it all comes down to it, you're going to have to make the hard decisions and say, you know what, this can't persist. We have a way of doing things. And we need our production. We need our processes in place. And if you're not doing what you need to do on your end, then, I don't hate you, but it's business. And so you need to understand where I'm coming from. And so you can't be afraid to confront an individual who is not living up to the standards that's been set.
Okay, very good. Now, what's another challenge that you believe that people in leadership have today? Not being confrontational, that's a big one for many individuals. What's another leadership challenge that you've witnessed among people in leadership today?
You know what? I've actually seen, people not having a lot of confidence where they are. You can get to a place of leadership where, you rose to a certain rank, but then you're still not confident enough to make the leap to somewhere higher. You think that you need to control a narrative or control your position where you are to hold on. And so you're afraid for others to kind of go up the ladder. You're afraid for others to be promoted because you need to hold on to what you got. And so I've seen leaders kind of fear that sort of unknown. What happens to me if other people are elevated? What happens to me, if there's an organizational shift? And so I've seen that quite a bit.
Is that something that the leader should be afraid about? Should anybody in a leadership position, should they really worry about who's going to, perhaps maybe move in their position, or who's going to succeed them, or, who could possibly take over in the event of corporate restructuring? Is that something that leaders should really be afraid of, or no?
I don't believe so. I've always been of the mindset that, if I'm in a leadership position and I have people on my team who are doing great, doing phenomenal, and they're being promoted or they're being considered for promotion, then that's a notch on my belt. That says that I've done something correctly. And so I would be happy to release them to go to that higher place so that I can also move somewhere else as well. But many people don't see it from that perspective.
Okay. We talked a little bit about the differences in the age groups and age demographics and leadership. How do we close those gaps? How do we build better bridges and better communication between, the older leaders and the younger leaders? And what can they learn from each other in their respective age groups?
Absolutely. I think bringing them together and kind of taking away those misconceptions that happens on both ends. I think, like we mentioned earlier, there's people who have a negative mindset about millennials, and then there's people who have negative mindset about boomers, Gen Xers. Then you got these new Gen Z people coming into the workforce, and they have a whole nother type of mindset and thought process. And I think just bringing them in together and kind of seeing where they are would kind of break down some of those barriers. Also, I think that there's also like a huge cultural and digital divide between the groups. And so we don't really understand how much technology plays in our current lives. And so millennials are very much tech focused. It's a tool for us, right? And we've grown up with it being a tool. Now you got Gen Z, and it's not so much a tool, but it's a part of who they are. And so the further you get away from the boomer generation, the more things kind of change. And so kind of bringing them together to have a dialogue and kind of say, okay, we understand that there's differences here, but how can we all be together on the same page?
Now, how challenging is that going to be, given that, you've got different communication methods? For example, you've got the boomers that, pretty much grew up with, still, writing letters, getting on the phone and calling people if they wanted to communicate. And then you've got the millennials and the Gen Zs that are texting, Instagramming, using social media as their primary platform of communication. And many of the older generations find that very frustrating. And, in some of my experiences, I have found out that the younger generations who typically do more of the social media communication, I find that there are some blockages in terms of communicating the message, getting your ideas through, and that's not going to change, because as we move to newer methods of technology, the younger generation is just going to gravitate toward it more. So what can we do in order to communicate better? And you talked about that as being a necessary a measure in order to close the gaps. But what can we really do to communicate better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing we should do is just put aside on the whole idea of what we're not going to do. And so saying, I'm not going to, open up Instagram. I'm not going to, touch Snapchat. Once we get to that point where we're saying what we're not going to do, I think that's the first step forward, because like it or not, those forms of communication is just here to stay. The names may change, but digital communication is here. And so now, how do you get to the place where you see it having value in your life? And I think that's the key difference right now. A lot of boomers don't see the value of having internet and having Facebook. We still have a lot of them who don't even use the internet. We're finding out now. I go to these meetings about digital divide, and so when you look at that and kind of like the stubbornness saying, I don't need that in my life. Then once you knock that down, then it creates opportunity in that space to say, okay, now I kind of understand that I need to reach out in this area to reach the younger generation.
The millennials and the Gen Zs, they obviously represent the future of our world, our society. Pretty much any industry, manufacturing, government, education, even ministry. Do you believe that the millennials, your generation, and the Gen Zs, do you believe that you guys are ready to inherit a lot of the leadership responsibility that has been held by the previous generations?
Um, I believe so. I actually do. I think the millennials are in a good place to inherit leadership. I think that what we've been seeing now in multiple industry, the tech industries, the digital spaces, that they found ways to kind of create inroads to create new industries, and in many cases, transform industries. And so I think they're ready. I just don't think that the rest of the world see them as quite ready. I think when we think about millennials, we still think about, a 40-year-old man living in the basement, in the dark, a dark room with a computer. It's kind of like when you turn on CNBC and you got the boomers saying, yeah, those retail investors buying their GameStop, and and they're just kind of painting this picture that you have a whole generation of incompetence. But really, if you look at the transformation that has happened over the last decade, that it proves that millennials are ready. And the Gen Z, they're quickly approaching. They're doing some amazing things. I mean, they're turning themselves into millionaires at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old with the power of their cell phone. I've seen a young lady who made $1 million grossed it in 1 hour by putting something, on her social site. And so I think the leadership potential is definitely there.
Let's talk about the financial gains that these younger generations mentioned. You just mentioned that a young lady, 10 years old, did you say?
Yeah.
Made $1 million in an hour. Do you feel that is good? Is that good? Economics. Is that harmful? To our societal relationships. We have somebody that young making that kind of money that soon. Are there any pros or cons to people becoming wealthy at such a young age?
I think that if there is a con, is that at a young age they might not know how to manage it, and then the adults around them might not know how to manage it. So you're at that young of an age, and what do you do just in case the money do dry up? What is your expectations then? And so I think that coming into money just quickly overnight like that, we've seen in the past with like lotteries and things like that, that it never really ends well. But I think with this generation, they're kind of smarter in that they have so much available to them that they do a lot of research. And so I think that the one positive of it is that it has the opportunity to kind of break generational poverty that's been plaguing a lot of what they call generational poverty from the millennials. I think the Gen Z can break that quite quickly, because the millennials had economic collapse. They have the housing bubbles and all these different things, and so you look at us statistically, we're not owning homes. We're not starting families as much. But I think with Gen Z, a lot of that could go away.
Have we done a good job? And I'm talking about my generation and the because I'm on the tail end of the boomers, like borderline, Gen X. So, some of the challenges that others have, I really don't have those challenges. Like, I embrace technology. I love it. I spend, thousands of dollars on technology for my business and other things. But do you think that, my generation, have we done a good job in preparing your generation for leadership in all aspects, educationally, just in terms of relationships, that we have with you guys as mentors, even spiritually, spiritual leaders and spiritual advisors? Has my generation done a good job in preparing you all for leadership?
You know what? I think overall, yes, I would say yes overall. I mean, you only have what you have available to you. And so each generation is kind of charged with taking what they have available to them and making the best of it. And so the millennials kind of came in into this whole time where the world was kind of quickly changing and adjusting. And so many of the boomers didn't have time to adjust with the millennials, but they used what they had in place to kind of instill in them the sort of values that needed to keep them grounded, and also the skills needed to take them further. And so I think overall, even in the spiritual sense and spiritual bias, religious, I think overall, they've done a pretty good job of preparing some some great leaders, that I've seen.
Mhm. Now, you are a leader in the nonprofit sector, which is a very huge area of industry. People don't consider it as industry. Most people, when they think about nonprofits, they think of charitable organizations, and their responsibilities are just to give and meet social needs, when really we don't have time to go into it right now. But when you talk about nonprofit, it's so much more diverse than that. But as a leader and in the nonprofit arena, as far as you've been in there, do you see any changes or any differences between somebody who leads a nonprofit organization or somebody who leads a for-profit organization? Do you see any mindsets that are different? Do they need to be changed or shifted? What are your thoughts about that?
It really depends on like the level of scale for the organization. Your larger nonprofits really operate like your like your classic corporation. It's top heavy with funding at the top. You have your middle management, you have your strict processes, and it's almost like running people through a grinder. You bring people in, you turn them over. So you see those parallels with your larger organizations. Where the difference is when the smaller organizations come into play. They have more of that heart, more of that passion for making sustainable change, whereas your smaller for profits, it's just more so, okay, I'm bootstrapping, I'm trying to survive, I'm trying to carry over into the next quarter. And your nonprofits, they're usually like, well, fun is important, but I'm going to get things done no matter what. And I'm just looking for something that would have more of a sustainable and longer term change.
Now, you talked about passion. That many of the smaller organizations, they seem to have a little bit more passion because they have boots on the ground, and they are, typically they listen more to the heartbeat of the people in the communities they serve. But should you sacrifice structure, organization, the personal discipline that comes with being a leader? Should you sacrifice that for sheer passion?
No, because you know what, you need both. It has to be a balance. You can have pure passion and never grow your organization, just because you're so eager to get things done, and so eager to be given, and so eager to chase after your mission. But oftentimes, when you do that and you don't have the balance of organization, you find yourself always chasing your tail, trying to grow. And so that's how you see these nonprofits that people start and they just kind of like stagnate, right? And so they just kind of stay where they are. The people have passion, they have heart, but they don't have the organizational skills to scale to where they should be at. And so I don't think you should sacrifice one for the other. I just think there should be a good balance there.
So what do we do with individuals who don't understand the need for the structure, the professional discipline, the growing your organization to scale, putting those processes in place so that their organization can be more sustainable? What do we do with those individuals? Do we let them stay? Do we gently nudge them out? Do we start to look for some successors? I mean, what do we do? Because if you've got somebody in a position of leadership and they're not really moving the organization forward, but what do? They have the passion, they have the heart. You definitely don't really want to lose that person if at all possible. But what do? How do you address leadership concerns like that?
You know, Usually when we have leadership concerns like that, what we would do is we would pull them and we have a conversation about the issue, and we'll say, okay, this is how it affects everyone overall, and then this is how it's going to affect you, and both positive and negative. And then I would look into having like some sort of leadership boot camp where they could kind of see how having their passion and their organizational skills married together can be a benefit to them, themselves, and everyone around them. And so, again, like you said, you don't want to discard people, right? Because they have raw talent, they have raw ability, they have passion. You want to tap into that for organizational growth. But for those people, you have to kind of connect it home to them because, you see it sometimes in grassroots organizations or even in ministries where it's like, I want to go all in. I just want to do this thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If you pull back and look at maybe some data points, that doesn't make you less of a leader. It just means that you're looking at it from a perspective that can set you on a path to win. And so you just have to explain it to them like that.
So that leads me to my next question. Given that point, first of all, this is a two-parter. People who are in leadership positions now, it could be nonprofit or for-profit. The people that we see in many of these leadership positions now, even in government, education, different sectors, are they really cut out to be leaders? That's part one. And then part two is, in your opinion, are leaders born? Are people born to lead, or is leadership something that is taught or cultivated?
Okay. So taking the first part of that question, I think that a lot of people who are in leadership, they're fit to lead, but maybe not leading in the position that they're in. Some people are just misappointed, plain and simple. And so they might have all the raw materials there. They might have the sound, they might even have the connections, but if you're not in the right space, then you set yourself up for eventual failure. To answer your second question, are leaders born or are they cultivated? Well, I've never met a person that wasn't born, and so I say that just to say that, I'll say this: I think everybody has the ability to lead, but I think they have to be cultivated. I mean, some people are just rough around the edges, and I was one of those people, so I could speak to that. You're rough around the edges. You have all the raw stuff to make it. It's like a recipe. You want to bake a cake that's delicious. You have to put all the ingredients together. And with leaders, it's like that. You have to kind of put the ingredients together and really make that leader. And sometimes that comes through experiences. Sometimes that comes through hard life lessons. But really, you need to put those things together to make that leader. But everyone has the ability to lead, but you have to know that you need to lead in the right space. Everybody can't lead everywhere.
Okay, everybody can't lead everywhere, and certainly everybody can't lead everybody. So how do we then transition people to the right space and to the right groups of people so that they can have the right influence, so that we can really begin to start seeing the type of changes that that we need to see, in our groups and in our societies? How do we get people in their right fit in leadership? How do we do that?
Every leader should take an inventory. What are they good at? What are their skills? What are their values? What are their priorities? You say, Marcel, that sounds similar. Well, it's not really similar. You need to learn, what do you prioritize as a leader? Do you prioritize relationships? Do you prioritize your on time? Do you prioritize money? What are your values? Is your value really the community? Is your values, growing an organization, growing a department? You have to figure out all those different things and then take a self-check inventory of, who you really are to find out where you need to go. And so that you're not spending time spinning your wheels in a position that you don't belong in.
Now, how do we help people who are not in the best position and not in the right position? How do we help them to understand that without being offensive?
Yeah, so you got to have the conversation, the bravery to approach them with the conversation to say, look, I'm not coming against you. I want the best for you. And because I'm on the outside looking in, I can see things that you can't see. And so let me help you in this area. And so once you have those conversations and you approach it to them like, hey, I'm just helping you to grow and helping you to lead, and I'm not trying to cast you out, then usually people are receptive to that.
All right, good. Well, Marcel, I want to thank you very much for being on the show tonight. Our time is just about up. You want to share any parting thoughts with our group, with our audience, before we close out this broadcast tonight?
I would say whatever it is that that you choose to do in leadership, make sure that you do it with your all, and don't look down on any starting place that you may be. Wherever you choose to lead, wherever you're placed to lead, wherever organization, wherever a department it is, whether it's sweeping the floor, whether it's being middle management, be the very best at it, and you'll reap the rewards of it.
Well, very good. And that is some great wisdom regarding leadership. Marcel, thank you so very much for being part of our broadcast tonight and being our guest on Under the Influence. And we're certainly going to have you come back again and address the audience and provide some of that great knowledge and wisdom and insight that you have. I truly, truly appreciate it. So thank you very much. And we will see you again next time. God bless you.
All right. Thank you.
Well, family, this concludes our podcast for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in for Under the Influence. And I guarantee you a lot of these technical glitches that we have had in this first episode, we're going to get those fixed. But thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch. And we're going to be on some other platforms as well because we want to make sure that people get this information because it's good information. I am Kevin Binion, your host for Under the Influence. Thank you so very much. And remember this as we part today, leaders lead from the front. Have a great evening. God bless you.